Hi, everyone. It's Lee Ray with the AMA, and I'm here with the Executive Director of Triple Tree Aerodrome, Robb Williams, and we're going to talk about the exciting event coming up next week called Joe Nall Week. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show, Rob.
Well, thank you. Appreciate being here.
So, Rob, I've always tried to preach the good word to people about coming to Joe Nall, and I'm glad that we have this opportunity because you're probably better at describing the history of Joe Nall and the facility because it's not just about model aviation, it's full scale too. So, first, can you give us a little background about your position there as CEO?
Sure. Yeah. As I've been here a little over 6 years now, and I come from an aviation family, and I grew up in Indiana, so it was all about racing. And then Dad was stationed at Grissom Air Force Base for a little bit in the reserve, so and he was also a pilot as well. So I grew up around aviation. It's been a real special part of my life. I've been really blessed to do a lot of different things as far as flying a lot of different aircraft to many different places around the world. And then I got into the nonprofit world of aviation, where I was at Sun and Fun in Lakeland, Florida. Ran things there for about 6 years in their educational programs. Also had a little stop before that as a teacher. So I was also lucky to teach a little bit on the high school and the collegiate level as an aerospace professor over at Polk State College. So shout out to my Eagles over there. So anyways, I worked my way over here and I met Pat Hartness, the founder of Triple Tree, and some of the volunteers at Sun and Fun through a mutual friend. And things were just the right timing for my family and I to move from Central Florida on up here to the upstate of South Carolina. And here I am and enjoying it. And it's like you said, it's like nothing you could ever experience. And I've seen a lot of great things in my aviation career all over the world. But when that horn sounds on Friday and people come over the hill, it is truly like something you've never seen before. You can't put it into words. And it's a special moment every time that happens.
Well, I have so many other questions to ask, but let's go back to the horn because, again,
Sure.
that's one thing about Joe Nall that some people hear about, but not everybody people know about unless you've been there. Describe what that means. Why is this horn something
Sure.
special?
Yeah, so it's basically I'm a Florida State Seminole, so it's the equivalent of back in the early to late '90s Florida State Florida football game where people would tailgate out for weeks before they could get a ticket to it. So probably about Monday to Tuesday next week, we'll have people wait in line to be the very first in line when the horn sounds. Now that horn itself is a World War II air raid horn, is what it is. So when we plug it in and we turn it on at 3 o'clock, the line of people that come on there, they come over the hill and they're the first in line to get their camping spot. So they stake their territory early, and it's really something cool to hear. And the other unique part of it is the testing part of it. We can't really test it ahead of time, so we're always kind of hoping it works, and it's always worked.
That's good.
But it's loud. It's loud as heck when it gets out there, and it's really fun. But it's a little procession, a little parade over the line there, and they go right down the hill.
Yeah, a
So,
horde comes to mind. I've heard it's
yeah,
crazy, going in, but it's a celebration, right?
absolutely.
It's the opening of a great event. And I'm going to back up one little more step because some people aren't familiar, and hopefully you can give us the story on it. Why is it called Triple Tree? Because it's not, again,
Okay.
not just about model aviation, but the entire facility is called Triple Tree Aerodrome.
Yeah, so I think it's important to even take a step back from there. So in the early '80s, Pat Hartness had a fly-in at his field in Greenville. It was SC-58, so he had an actual airport there. And his part was when he was a young man, he was kind of shooed away at an RC event and made to feel unwelcome. So he wanted a place where everybody would always come and always feel welcome. And he created that up in Greenville. But as the event started getting bigger and the city started getting bigger, they started wondering what all these airplanes were flying overhead. Back in the day, that was called the Big Bird Flying. And so he actually had a petition given to him from his neighbors to basically kick him out of the neighborhood. And he's trying to find, and the petition says, "Rawr" is what it's written on there. It's the sound of the airplane noise. So in the early '80s, also, Pat had his best friend, Joe Nall. They went to college together at Furman, and Pat went into business, and Joe went into public service, and he worked his way up into the NTSB. So Joe was actually the master of ceremonies at the Big Bird Fly-In. And while he was working for the NTSB, he passed away in investigating an airplane accident. So they changed the name, I believe, in '81 to the Joe Nall Fly-In. And we changed it to Joe Nall Week, so it was a week long. But as that was happening, the event was growing. It was still being called Joe Nall Week, but we needed more space and more property. So in 2010, Pat and Mary Lou Hartness purchased land in what at the time was the middle of nowhere, South Carolina. And South Carolina has grown out there, lots of thanks to Michelin and BMW. But in Woodruff purchased 400 acres of undeveloped property out here. And he had a vision. He had a team of great volunteers at the time and still does, and it's grown. And he said, I'm going to put a runway here. I'm going to put a flying field there. And people all looked at him and thought, well, wow, that's ambitious. Even built a lake at the time. So in 2012, after they purchased land, Pat and Mary Lou donated the property to the Triple Tree Aerodrome 501c3 nonprofit as their gift to aviation. So Pat always says this is an experiment. We're going to see how this all works, and it's been a successful experiment. Now, I mean, this is his Kiwanis Club. He doesn't do the golfing thing. He doesn't do lots of many other things. This is his life. And there's lots of other people that believe in the vision that himself and Mary Lou created all those years ago. So the naming of the Triple Tree itself. So there were 3 large trees when they bought the property. And Pat and Mary Lou were talking, this place needs a name. What are we going to call it? And Mary Lou actually came up with the idea of, we're going to call it Triple Tree. So of those original 3 trees, only one has survived. So one had a little accident during construction, and the other one had some disease and fell apart. So they planted 3 new triple trees from the acorns from the Angel Oak on Johns Island out on the main line. So next time you're out at the main line, you'll see 3 trees strategically planted there. And they grew those trees out of Dixie cups. So little Dixie cups in their house, and they transplanted them out here. So I think it's been about 18 years since that first happened when they planted them out there. So that's how it got the name Triple Tree.
There you go. Thank you for sharing that. Because again, people just don't know. They are in the middle of the field, they middle of the road. No, they're there to celebrate. And I knew that unfortunately they had lost the originals, but it's great that they kept that story going, that they wanted to continue it.
Yeah.
And it is an amazing facility. I want to go touch on what you mentioned, which as a visitor to the event, I can't tell you how wonderful the volunteers are out there. They are so helpful. And I know you wanted to give a shout out to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the Triple Tree Aerodrome itself is 400 acres. When you put that into perspective, as far as size wise goes, it's about the size of the French Quarter in New Orleans, or 2.5 times the size of Disneyland out in California. So it's a Herculean task with 3 employees. So it's myself, our facility manager, Matt Crane, and then our facilities coordinator, Anthony Phillips. So you can imagine that can't happen by itself. So we have a team of fantastic volunteers that I've never seen the ownership and the love of a place that I've seen here with our volunteers. Many of them will come in from during the week, will take a week of vacation off to come out here. And that's their part and their ownership, and they're a fantastic contributor. And what we started about 3 years ago is a program called Base to Final. So as you're preparing to land, is what we're basically doing. We're in sterile cockpit procedures now for our event. So no wild changes of ideas, but Base to Final turn, we have volunteers that come in 2 weeks early. We ask them to get here 2 weeks early, and they come here and they help us, and they're creating their own little community of people and getting projects done for us. And that's one of their perks also, is by coming in 2 weeks ahead of time, they get to be first in line to get their campsite. So it's a nice little trade-off for them. But I mean, when you look at the amount of volunteers that we have that contribute over 500 hours, and it's a scale, young women as young as 12 years old that I've had volunteer for me, all the way up to Pat's Uncle John at 100 years old. So we take them all, and they're all contributing, and it's fantastic to see them all come together.
They are very well appreciated out there. I remember, just for fun, my first time out there with my buddy Fitzwalker, I put a GoPro on the golf cart we rented. And interjection here, rent a golf cart. I mean, I know they go fast, but I was told you really need to get a golf cart. It saved the day. But for fun, we took that golf cart from the entrance at the top of the hill all the way down to 3D. It is just massive. And without those volunteers, it just can't happen. But there are just so many locations. You got helicopter, you've got the main line, you've got electric, you've got the float font, vendor row, then you have 3D flying and control line. I mean, there have to be volunteers everywhere to make this event run smoothly. And you guys do a great job. I can't tell you how much fun it was and how smooth things ran.
Yeah, and we've got a fantastic golf cart vendor. Couldn't do it without them. They're one of a kind. And Ginger, that runs our golf carts for us, she does a great job with that. But we also do have transportation that'll take you all throughout the property. So whether it's golf cart transportation or whether it's bus transportation, different times. So Tommy Bain's heading that up for us, doing a great job with that. It's like you said, for those who haven't been here, if you think of a map of Disney World or you think of a sports complex, you're here, and each area has its own little discipline that it does, but they all speak the same language. Whether you're playing basketball here and baseball there, everybody plays sports, and they all have the same language they can share. And that's the cool thing is, Uncle John, when I first took the job, he said when people come through that gate, all their problems go away, and everybody's the same height, which is cool. So everybody's treated the same, and everybody's problems go away. And that's really one of the important things that we strive for is this is people's vacation. They come here. We don't have Wi-Fi for them, and that's a good thing at times. And, a buddy of ours, Mike PQ, said, this is a people event that airplanes just happen to show up at. And he's right. He's so right. I mean, you'll have people that come from all over the world, and they want that campsite back because they're with their buddy that's 2,000 miles away, but they see them that week of Joe Nall, which is really cool.
Oh yeah. Well, the first year I went was with Fitz. I came back and Fitz and I rented an RV. We stayed the whole week.
Yes.
That was so much fun. I made the trip from Texas. My good friend Phil Tallman, who's a VP for AMA, he was out there. We hung out. I think some of the best fun we had was at the pond because I think on the last day it was just the three of us. Just flying on that pond by ourselves. It was a blast. So you have definitely the facility. Can you remind me how long that runway is, the main runway?
Yeah, so the main runway is right around 7,000 feet, and it's grass. It's 419 Tifton Bermuda grass, and it's one of the longer runways as far as airport size-wise. It's bigger than Chicago Midway, but it's a Bermuda grass runway, which is very unusual, and we do use that for our general aviation operations during our general aviation events. So we are 50-50, so half of our events are radio control, half of our events are general aviation for us.
Well, let's talk about the week at Joe Nall. So you have a schedule that you gave me, but I think you'd be better off telling the people listening and watching what it's like to be at Joe Nall. What can you do out there?
Well, the biggest thing is fly. You got flight lines that are open 24 hours a day, and there's lots of fun flying happening all along. So, and there's vendors. We have over 30, as of right now, over 35 vendors that are showing up for our event, and they're from all over the world. And so they're showcasing their latest technology for all the people to come in and purchase and test out. We've got mainline demos. So the demos start on Wednesday, and they're at 12 o'clock. And what I try to do is stage that to where on the main lines at 12 o'clock, you've got the jets and then followed by the warbirds. Then you go down to the electric line, and they have their demos. Then you go back down to the 3D line. So you can actually make a little trip of it going up and down the facility to see all the demos. But as far as our pre-sales go, so one thing that we're very aware of is price increases all around us. I mean, you think of what something cost a year ago or even a month ago and how prices have gone up. So we have actually kept our pre-sale prices the same since they were from last year. And there's not many businesses that can say that. We're very proud of that fact. So as of today, we're over 850 pre-registrations for the event. And that's pretty great because about this time, we're usually around 600 pre-registrations. So we'll end up with well north of 1,100 pilots for the event. And again, coming from all over the world. So pre-registration cutoff today. Now, it doesn't mean you can't still purchase tickets. Yes, you can, but you have to wait till you're at the gate to purchase them there. And also, as far as affordability goes, I do want to stress that our vendors, we are very grateful for our vendors. The pilots love to show up and see the vendors and see what they have to do. And we've tried really hard again to keep that vendor cost low. So we do publish our vendor costs on our website so people can see how much it costs. So for example, for front-facing footage at our event, you're looking at around $300. That doesn't include a tent or travel or anything, but $300 to be with thousands of pilots from all over the world for your product. So we're really happy for those vendors showing up year after year, and we know that they're a very special part of the event.
Could you touch on something that I think is also very important for people who are listening? If you don't want to get involved in, camping there and being a pilot, talk about people who just want to watch.
Yes. So Triple Tree Aerodrome, one, to fly, you need to be a registered and current member of the Academy of Model Aeronautics. So we have a great partnership with them to make sure that we, tell people to join AMA ahead of time. But if you do want to be a spectator, you need to have a person who's a member of an aviation organization sign up for you and basically vouch for you at the gate. And then you can come on down and you can be a spectator. But if you're an AMA member or you're AOPA or EA and you just don't want to fly, you just want to come hang out, absolutely. You can come on in, you can be a spectator for the day. And we do have a large amount of people that do that as well.
It's a large, I was going to say, because as someone who's a photographer, and I remember the first time I walked that flight line, amazing aircraft there. Your jaw will drop on not just the quality, but the size of some of these aircraft. They're humongous,
Oh
and
yeah.
so I know that that's a joy just to see that. Not to mention the people down at 3D are putting on one heck of a show, as you said, 24/7. They can't stop. So that's also an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah, it's really cool. We do have some other highlights on Thursday, of the event. That's kind of a very busy day. So we've got the t-shirt giveaway that we've been doing with RC groups now. So Jim Graham's led a fantastic event there, and that's very well attended down there on the 3D line at 11 o'clock on Thursday. The Academy of Model Aeronautics, their national meeting is actually that evening. So we've been happy to work with Chad and his team over there to go ahead and have all the district representatives up there so they can have a good interaction with everybody while they're there. And then later on that evening, there's going to be pylon racing, and there's going to be the 3D throwdown back down at the 3D line. So it's a lot of events all the time. But as you can see throughout the week, it kind of ramps up with activity, culminating on Friday with our mainline demos. And that's when we do give away the Joe Nall Award. And that is an award that's in honor of Joe. And it's basically I call it the fun uncle, when you have a family reunion and the person that you're always excited to see. And that's really who Joe was. And I've been told how he will carry on through that award. I like to think of it as the Stanley Cup. People don't know who Lord Stanley is, but you tell the story enough and you know who Lord Stanley is. So it's our Stanley Cup for us.
You want to touch on the steak dinner?
Sure. Yeah.
I experienced that last year. That was amazing.
All right. So this is one of the cooler things. Now, at my previous employer, that's all they talked about was, you got to come for this steak dinner. It's amazing. And I've had steak dinners before. I'm like, okay. So I got here and they give you a filet. Here's your filet. And it's cook your own steak provide. Yeah, it's a legit filet. And the grill's out there, and it's a grill that they engineered at Hartness Engineering. So it's got the perfect amount of distance on it, and it cooks your steak just perfectly. And if you mess it up, it's your own fault. So you sit there and you watch it overlooking the lake. It's just a beautiful, beautiful scenery. And that lake, let me tell you, that's a cool little story. It's called Lake Montana. You're like, all right, well, why is this called Lake Montana? We're in South Carolina. Well, that lake was dug. Pat and the guys were digging on it back in the day to make a lake out of it, and realized, as Pat said, I'm going to be at this the rest of my natural born life. So he had stock in a company called Montana Power at the time and sold the stock. And after he sold the stock to finance the dam, 6 months later, the company got a new CEO into telecommunications, went bankrupt. So he got a dam out of the stock. So that was pretty lucky timing on that. But I do want to touch on something as far as finances go. We are a 501c3, and Pat and Mary Lou were the founders of it. And founders of a nonprofit can only contribute up to so much money each year. So this is now our responsibility. So there's no bailouts for us. We have to make this on our own, and we're doing a great job about it. And I think the other important thing is we do have some general aviation aircraft that fly, and those are all financed separate from any of the RC money. So the RC money that comes in helps take care of the facility, the 30,000 pounds of fertilizer that goes on there, keeping the lights on, keeping this facility running 365 days a year. So we are very cautious of that and how that's led, but we can't do this without the support of all the people who come to our events, our volunteers, and our generous donors.
Yeah, I'd like to add, again, as someone who's participated, there are tons of restrooms, tons of showers, great facilities, rocking chairs. As someone who's getting up there, I've sat in those rocking chairs myself a couple of times to just chill and relax. But you mentioned the hangar, but the aircraft, you got full scale aircraft in this beautiful hangar, but you also have a training facility off to the side. Can you touch on that?
Sure. Yeah. So as far as the learning center was a donation from Robert Shaw, who actually helped donate the control line circles for us. So inside the learning center, we've got different programs that run throughout the year called ACE. So that's Aviation Centered Education. So we've got a lot of different little programs inside of there. One of them we're doing right now, it's radio control. We have young men, young women starting at about age 12, I like to do, and teach them to fly radio control in the spring and in the fall. And then we have summer camp programs. So our summer camps, we're running 2 sessions of general aviation and 2 sessions of radio control. We do that in partnership with a great teacher at Greenville Technical Charter High School. So they're a very fantastic school here in the upstate for us. They have an aviation curriculum. We work very, very well with them. During the Joe Nall week, part of the InReach that we're going to do is we're having a school tour, student tours for the first time ever. So shout out to Miss T's class. We're going to see you guys on Tuesday out there. So it's going to be our first time doing student tours. And then we also have schools come out and use it for a testing facility. So Christ Church School, the University of South Carolina Aerospace, they use it for testing UAVs and rocketry. So there's always something going on here. And so inside the Learning Center, we're actually looking at expanding that further back because we developed in partnership with Greenville Technical Charter High School the first ever state champions for aviation called Avicom. So that it's been on the second year now that we've done it. We broke it up by congressional districts, and we have high schools compete in simulated flight, airman knowledge, and aircraft recognition to crown the first ever state champion for simulated flight. So that's been a really cool thing to see how that's happened. In the back of our facility, as we move back on the Learning Center here, we're going to expand that back and have more simulators for those opportunities. And then when you walk out of there, you'll see a big green patch of grass. That's future plans. That used to be a big hole in the ground, to be honest with you. It was filled with 30,000 cubic yards of dirt that they moved from the north side of the facility down. And we're looking at building a large gathering place called the flight deck. So that's going to be a place where we can have our meals. We might be able to have classrooms in the future if we ever decided to get into a school system, something of that nature. And then behind that, as you mentioned, is our aircraft hangar. So in that hangar, you got everything that hangs from the ceiling, with the exception of the Volks plane, is a radio control aircraft. And Saul, one of our fantastic volunteers, actually built 2 scale Volks planes, and he's going to be raffling them off during Joe Nall. So there's a 45% scale Volks plane and a 75% scale Volks plane. They'll be ready to fly, and all the profits from that will go back towards our summer camp programs. But on the ground there, as far as general aviation aircraft, we had a P-51. So it's important to know that that P-51 was sold last year, and all the money for that P-51 went into an endowment. So when people see something constructing out here, the P-51 will pay for it. No, that's not how we structured the endowment. The endowment is there to ensure the stability and the safety of Triple Tree and the growth of it for long term. So we can go into the endowment if we need to, but the goal is to let it grow, so we can always have money for fertilizer, or God forbid another COVID situation happens or something like that, that we have that safety net to grow. So the P-51 is no longer there, but we do have a Piper Cub, a J3 Cub. So Ben Templeton, one of our volunteers, he actually flew that to all 48 states. He's an RC and a GA pilot, both. He flew that to 48 states after his graduation, his senior year. So he's flying commercially now. So the J3 Cubs there, we have 2 Stearmans, a BT-13, an Aircam, which is a fantastic airplane. So 2 engines on the back of it. So that's kind of fun. Golden Chief, and then a Mooney aircraft in the hangar. And the crown jewel of them is a 1937 Spartan executive aircraft. So there's less than 20 of them flying now. And for those of you who haven't seen it, please take a look at it. It's a magnificent aircraft. And that Spartan has been asked to fly in the AOPA 85th anniversary celebration on May 11th. So AOPA is celebrating 85 years. They've asked aircraft that symbolize 15 different chapters in aviation history to fly through the National Mall, up the Potomac, and towards the state capital. The nation's capital. So they'll be flying up there through restricted airspace. They've had to undergo briefings of all sorts of things. A chairman of our board, Sean Hartness, Pat's son, will be piloting that alongside Robb Templeton. So it'll come through there. It'll come back to Triple Tree during Joe Nall week. So we'll have everybody down their aircraft. The Spartan will come in and land. And it's not something we typically do just for safety, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So when that Spartan's on the ground, we're going to have a symbolic passing of the torch, if you will. So we're going to have the new generation of aviators that Triple Tree has developed. So Ben Templeton, Logan McAllister, Eva Miller. So they'll all be out there alongside with Jensen Hoke. So I've known Jensen from Florida since he was in 8th grade. So these are guys and gals who've all started in RC and have used general aviation also, but their first love is RC. So they all get in that aircraft and they'll take back off out of Joe Nall, do a couple of low passes, and then fly back out of there. So that's a really special part of what we're doing and showing that the next generation is here and ready to take care of us and ready to keep Triple Tree going for the long term.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I love that you're still building up the youth to, to keep the hobby and the joy of aviation going. So thank you guys, because I know, again, just as a modeler and just hanging out there, I know that you guys are working hard to keep the hobby and the thrill alive.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So you've got a couple of days left. You've probably got a lot of work on your plate, and I'd love to keep chatting with you, but I know you got to get back to work because, as you said, that horn's got to blow. There are crowds of people that are coming over. I want to thank you so much, Rob, for taking out the time to chat with us. If you guys want to hear more or learn more about Triple Tree Aerodrome, go to tta.aero. And that's it. There's no .com. Just go there. You can see a whole bunch of information, especially with Joe Nall Week here. Keep up with here with AMA Air. I'm sure we will have photos to share with you from our staff that are going out there. Also, if you want, go back to our YouTube channel and you can see some videos that I recorded at our previous times out there at Joe Nall, and it is a blast. So please, if you have never been, put it on your bucket list. Go say hi to Rob the next time you're out there and have a blast.
Thanks. Look forward to everyone being out here. Appreciate the time.
Y'all have fun.